Shiver me timbers, it's St. Patrick's Day.
I am Lesley Marcovich.
And I'm Donna Hedley. And this is our podcast, What's Your Story? Where we're going to help you to write your life story.
I'm coming to you from my hometown, picturesque, charming, beautiful Newmarket. It's just close to Toronto, in Ontario, Canada. It's well known for its motion pictures because many are filmed here in Newmarket.
And I'm coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, the capital. Well, actually, we were the capital, the coldest capital in the world. We had that significance of being the coldest capital in the world.
Oh, I thought you said coolest.
Oh. Well, it is pretty cool too, yes.
The coldest capital?
The coldest capital, yep, in the world. But anyways, so I'm from Ottawa, and this is our first episode number 1, and we're calling it Welcome to Your Life Story. And we're going to help you to write your life story.
And share stories and hear other people's stories and encourage you through the fact that everything can be told. You don't have to hold back. Be bold. Tell your story. And today's introductory episode is about who we are and how we can help you write your story and why your story matters. So we're going to talk to you about what these podcasts are going to involve and what they can do for you. As we go along in the episode, you'll hear many stories of life. And these stories will likely take you to faraway places and a faraway time and resonate with you. And they may feel like hauntingly familiar. And then there's an emotional side. They will stir a lot of emotions in you and ignite your senses. And in some cases, well, I would like to argue in all cases, move you spiritually. After all, we're all connected through our stories.
So the idea of our podcast is to encourage people to write their own stories, their life stories, because everybody's story matters. And so as Lesley was talking about, these are a lot of things we're going to touch on, and we're going to do it through talking about different ideas, techniques, reasons, and so forth for everybody to write their own story. In future episodes, what we plan to do is we're going to take a question from the Biography Timeliner, and we're going to talk about it. And so I'm going to talk about what it means to me. Lesley's going to talk about what it means to her. And we're just going to discuss that. But we want to get interaction from people. We want to have a lot of input from the listeners.
And we'll have guests coming on the show to share their stories as well.
And we invite listeners to email us and give us ideas of things that they'd like us to cover, or to give us their story on the different topics or questions that we talk about, and give their input.
There's nothing that you cannot write about. Difficult times, dark times, it can all be handled with creativity and believe me, in my coaching days or ghostwriting days, so many people say, I can't say that, I want to, I need to tell it, but it's difficult, it's tough. I've always helped them find a way to tell it that doesn't take away from the truth, but certainly doesn't harm anybody, doesn't sort of put anybody's families in jeopardy or anything like that. So, and in the joyous times too, how to write a love letter to your child, anything to do with writing and communicating and finding your voice. Finding your voice itself is a topic. So first of all, let me tell you who I am. Yes, you know I live in Newmarket. I do hail from South Africa, born and raised there, and basically got into this whole field of helping people write their life stories because really I don't have my own family stories. And I understand how difficult that is, not to know that connection, not to know the family stories. Losing my mum when I was very young, and dad sort of went off and remarried, and we never talked about that episode again. Uh, the stories have all died along with my family. So I do have distant relatives and that I can connect to, but I just really understand the importance of having your life story written. So I began on this journey of helping people to write their life stories. Fortunately, I was able to do that through writing, and that's how, after sort of getting on the track, writing a book about writing life story, being at a trade show, this big smiling lady came up to me one day, many years ago, and that's how Donna and I got connected. We shared the dream, and that's how we are where we are today. And we'd also tell you a little bit about what we've done so far. But right now, I'll put you over to Donna.
Well, yeah, I was born and raised in Toronto, and uh, well, did a lot of things that people normally do. Got married, went to college. Actually, not in that order. Had children, got divorced, and so forth. So I ended up here in Ottawa, as I mentioned, um, and after my divorce, I met the most wonderful man in the world, and we've been together. We're actually going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary. Would be 20, almost 30 years, 25 years since we met, and 20
Wow.
years that we've been cohabitating.
Mm-hmm.
So our 20th wedding anniversary.
Very
And
nice.
so that's my, and speaking of life story, I mean, as we talk about, I just wanted to do a few little plugs here. You mentioned about the day we met, and I remember how we met it was a women's conference here in Ottawa, and I had gone to the women's conference because I was looking for possible clients, and I found one.
Here we go.
And
That's when you were a book publisher?
yeah, I had written a book, and here's my book right here, Strategies for Happiness. And I decided I was going to create a publishing company in order to publish my book, self-publish it, but I wanted to have a company that went along with it. So I created a company called Sassy Sunflower Books. And I decided, okay, I was going to try and help other people publish their books. So that's why I went to the women's conference to see if I could find people who I could help out. And that's how I met you. And we had a great discussion about what your book was about. And so here is our first collaboration together, the
Right.
biography workbook. Now, you had
Yes.
already published a copy of this,
Yes.
but this was the copy that I redid it for you and published it under the Sassy name.
Mm-hmm.
And my niece did the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And what I always found really fascinating about this book, what I thought was so cool, was that, like, the idea was that you had all sorts of information about techniques and so on and so forth, about writing, ideas, coaching, and so forth. Then you have questions that people could answer, and they just go through the book, read the question, write out the answer. But what I thought was so cool was your idea was that when they were finished, so here's the book, here's all the coaching material. You tore off all of this front piece, wrote on the front here the title and your name, and there was your biography.
Right.
I thought that was so cool. And then No. Then there's this one. What we did, well, we did a third version of the biography workbook, and then we decided let's create what we call the handbook, so that it was all the questions, but not with any spaces. Just
and the coaching.
Yeah. And that way, then the people, if they didn't want to use the workbook, they could just use a notebook and just go through the questions and write out the answers. And when they were done, they had a good basis for their story.
Yeah, or use a computer, of course. Yeah.
Whatever method that they liked. But it was just a more compact way of doing it. And so these two books, my book, the Strategies for Happiness, and the Biography Handbook, are both available on Amazon. Well, other websites too, but you can get it on Amazon.
It brings me to a point that I'd just like to add there, is that I started ghostwriting for clients way back when, and what happened was I had many clients. So the last one was somewhat of a celebrity, but of course, when you're a ghost, you cannot say the name. And then while I was doing this ghostwriting, which takes about 2 years, well, a year to 2 years for each client, I felt that people kept on coming up to me and saying, "Oh, well, you should write my own story. Oh, my grandmother, she's almost passed away, but she's got so many stories. Can you? And I was going to bed with all these people wanting me to write their story. There just wasn't time. So that's what sort of gave me this idea of taking all the experience I had in ghostwriting and putting it down into a book that could help there, where people could go and I could literally be their writing coach throughout their entire story, and based on certainly guidance and opening their minds and tapping into their memories, etc., but also through questions, because when you ask one question, it's like opening a can. That's what I say, a question is a can that you just do that one little thing and you start opening it, and one question can lead to chapters of information and recollection of people's stories. And that's what I would do with my clients as a ghostwriter would be. Certainly they would ramble on and on and on for hours, but then I would ask questions. It's almost like therapy. How did you feel about that? And where were you at the time? So that's how this whole story, or this whole tool to help everyone write their story, came about.
Well, so after we published the handbook and made it available on Amazon, the next step was, well, we had talked a lot about the idea of making it an online version, and that is my area of expertise. I'm a programmer, and I love working with things technical. I love working with websites and so forth.
She's a genius.
Well, I always say sometimes I'm absolutely brilliant, but we won't talk about the other times. The biography workbook is, again, basically the idea of there's a whole pile of questions. You just go through the questions, you answer them, and then in the end you have your biography. So we wanted to mimic that on the online version. So we had it where the questions were there. They were broken down. We chunked them down into periods, like your infancy, your childhood, and whatever. And then you just go in and you answer the question, and then in the end it creates a report that lays everything out for you. And then we decided to really bite the bullet, and we hired somebody, and he designed the site, which was then what we call the Biography Timeliner was born.
he did a fantastic job. I mean, I've shown the site to people, have seen the site, and very, very large computer firms and that have seen it, and it's very professional. People are really enjoying using it, and the possibilities with the site are endless. The hopes and dreams that I have for this the site, going into uh, prisons, going into all the retirement homes. And we can get into that a little later of already what has happened with Biography Timeline.
Actually, I think that this would be a good time to just have a quick look at the biography timeliner.
Yes.
Just to give people a little idea of what we're talking about.
Okay.
So here is the biography timeliner. And I love our slogan. Our amazing techno genius who put together our website initially came up with this slogan. I thought, Chad Tiffin, yes. And we'll give a little shout out to Chad Tiffin here.
He's brilliant young guy.
Did a lovely job on our website. So he came up with this slogan. I thought it was great. Your life is a story. Let us help you tell it. And of course, the Biography Timeliner will help you to create and share your very own biography. Now, this is some more information. We're going to come back to this little video in a second. This is more information about the Timeliner. I'll let the people, our readers can come and take a look. The website is biographytimeliner.com, and just they can browse through. Just a little plug here. It's only $39.99, and it gives you lifetime access to the Biography Timeliner. So just take a look, come and take a look at our website, go through and read everything. And then down here is here's a little plug for you, a little shout out for you, Lesley, why you created the Timeliner. That's a lovely picture of you, by the way.
Thank you. That was just snapped in my dining room.
And we have a 2-week free trial that people can plug in if they want to take a look at it. All right. So walk us through this.
Okay. So here we are at Biography Timeliner, which is on the left. You will see that it's divided into various periods of one's life. And this is where all the questions will be housed. As you click on one, you'll see they'll open up. That happens with all of these. This is where you will write your story. This expands the screen, the white rectangle here expands so that you can continue to write and not be limited. This is childhood, for example. I will find one that I have written so that you can see. There we go. So this question, 3.5, what did my mother look and dress like? There would be a coaching tip here. And in the coaching articles, it'll tell you all about show, don't tell. So you can always refer back to the coaching articles. Curlers. This will trigger you to remind you about your mum's hair. Shoes, what were they like? So you have all these different triggers that will help you to describe your mum. At the same time, at the bottom, there is a coaching article that is suggested for this particular question. And this article is all about how to write about appearances. It's very comprehensive. So I started writing based on these particular triggers. She had a head of wavy hair. She wore it short, managed to straighten it somehow, and she also dyed it black. Um, Back then, most women wore dresses and shoes all the time, even inside. They were well groomed, even around the house. And of course, Mum would wear a hat to church on the occasional time we went to church on Sunday. She had a large scar on her stomach from an operation she'd had years before I was born, plus the cesarean scar from my birth. Mum, with her hazel eyes, was always gentle and cheerful, and always busy and curious, and always enthusiastic and loving towards me, even when she was sad. So that's just an example of what a question like this might look like. I would save it and check mark that it's complete, and therefore that will mean that that will appear in my bio, and you'll see that in a moment. I added a photograph here. I not sure if I added a caption, but in this particular one, but absolutely you can add a caption. Me, mum, and I, or me and mum at the Japanese garden in Durban. And again, that's the coaching article. Then, if there was any, I could have taken a note as well and added something on to that particular question, random notes, dated it around this era we're talking about. Then I could also go into the timeline and see if there is anything that I can add to it. Now, as you will see, the timeline has given me, I'm talking about my childhood, and the periods of my childhood will come out. They will be visible here. Now, you can always see all the events. That's not a problem. But just for keeping to this period, maybe we're talking about maybe 1965 and some of the things that may have happened then. So the timeline that you click on, for example, I've just clicked on 1965, any of that period that you're writing about, like your childhood, you can, have a look. And if any of these things kind of relate to your childhood, you can click on them. Then GM cars, for example, and you can GM introduces the Oldsmobile. In fact, my father did have an Oldsmobile. That would be a wonderful note to add on during my childhood, and I would do that. I would just comment on that. Yep, Dad had an Oldsmobile, and I'd go into a bit more detail about what it was like and what I felt about it, and then I would save that. So then, when you look at my bio, all your scratch notes, your questions, your photographs will all appear. And I will show you so far a base, my basic bio. So here it is. This is what I filled in so far. What is my full name? Infancy. This was one of the questions. Do I remember scents, sounds, and sights and feelings as a baby? And that really triggered, just that question alone triggered a lot of memories for me.
So now that we've talked about the timeliner a bit, so we talked about how we met and how our evolution through the book and then creating the timeliner, and then oh yeah, the next big step. What was, you remember the next big thing after we did the timeliner?
Udemy?
Udemy.
Yes. We have a series at 24, Donna, is it? 24, 25 videos that
Something
we've
like that.
these are very professionally done by Donna with beautiful images and music, and they really are um, very informative on teaching you how to write your life story, going through the various chapters of your life, starting at your birth again and going all the way through to the future, talking about publishing and editing and all that kind of thing. And we filmed these in Ottawa, and they take basically a lot of the coaching material and put it into short videos. They average about 5.5 to 6 minutes each. And so they are available, as I said, on udemy.com.
So our course is how to write your life story. And I'm just going to put in your name just to make sure it comes up right away. And there we go. So and here it is. And it's still new. Okay, so here's our course. How do I write our life story? And here are, we just recently published that on Udemy. So if anybody's interested in taking a look at it, they can do that. That was a lot of work. We put a lot of work into that course.
We did, yes.
It took us like 2 years, I think, to get that.
I think it did, yes, absolutely.
What are we going to do on this podcast? What are some of the things we're going to do on our podcast?
Well, we're going to certainly try to emphasize the importance of writing your life story. And you touched on that a little earlier when you talked about expressing yourself in writing. And I like to say that writing your life story helps you to uncover and discover and recover and rejoice. And the extent of that is, as we said before, very therapeutic. It helps you to leave a legacy. We have a very short video, Donna, that we could show on 8 reasons why to write your life story.
All right, just a second. I will bring that up.
One of the main things is to be remembered. There's writing your life story. Like, if you think about it, excuse me, if you think about it, if the only stories that are told now today are of the rich and famous, can you imagine what future generations will think of this generation? They would think, you we were all crazy sometimes. And you have to think to yourself, how would you feel if you had the stories of your great great grandfather and the things that he did, and the day-to-day stuff, the working on the farm, and how he felt about the world, and just his perspective on things, on what was going on. And maybe there was some kind of conflict at the time in the country he was in, and how he felt about that. It would be so priceless to have information about your own ancestors. Therefore, one day you will be an ancestor, so to leave that priceless legacy. We also talked about how writing gives you perspective, like I explained with little Teo, the perspective on, wow, that's actually quite funny now that I write it down. It also gives you a way to heal, of course, by expressing that. When you have all these pent up feelings inside and emotions, and you write about it, you let them out, and they become tangible, and you can look at them and perhaps rearrange some of your thoughts, and they're a mirror, but you can rearrange the thoughts and detoxify yourself of certain thoughts. It also gives you perspective. Writing gives you perspective, makes you realize that not everybody sees the world the same as you do. It gives you this amazing stage where you can talk, you can share your feelings and your stories, where nobody can interrupt and nobody can challenge you and and basically tell you that that's not true. It's your truth. Your story is your truth. Nobody sees the world the way you do. Nobody feels the way you do. And this writing your life story gives you an incredible platform to just explain to everybody who you are with no interruptions. And it's an amazing educational tool as well, to teach future generations, to teach others. That's why we have groups to share, because we educate each other all the time. And so your story, it is amazing, but your story can change other people's lives. I know this firsthand. It happened to me when I related one of my stories, and somebody came up to me afterwards, years later, and said it saved their life. We'll get into that in a later podcast when we talk about loss. And but it really, really can affect other people's lives. So touching on those reasons, I know you're all going to start writing today. I just know it. Don't be forgotten. Don't be misrepresented. Speak your truth. Now, the other side of that is, if you don't write your life story, you will be forgotten and misrepresented. Even people are misrepresented even at their own funerals. People tell stories about them, and I sometimes go, that's not who they were. you know
Mhm.
that's not what they thought. I've known my husband since I was 14, and he still today comes up with one or two things that, and I go, are you kidding? That's not who I am. You have a vision, you say a certain thing about me, I'm writing my own obituary. That's what I said. You are not writing my, because you don't get it right, all of it. Some of it you do. Gotta get your own story written down. For example, my own mum, who walked into the ocean when I was 14. I don't have any of her writings. I don't know her feelings. I don't know what she thought about the world, about anything. They were all basically washed away when she died that morning, as I said, when I was 14. So the only thing I have from her is a note. And it's nothing, it's not a note to me, it's a note to a sister who was living, perhaps the one sister who was living in a different province at the time, that she wrote, where she included some photographs in this little, well, you could call it a letter. And that's all I have of hers that is written. And I find that very, very sad. I
Yeah,
wish I'd had more.
yeah. My aunt, my aunt. There was my aunt, my two aunts, and my mother, and they were known as the three sisters in their church. My mom, her name was Evelyn, and my aunt Lily, and then my aunt Kay. And they've all passed away now. A few years ago, I had the privilege of going down, spending a lot of time in Toronto and being with them and helping them out. And when they got older, things were kind of getting hard for them. And so my sister and I, we took turns going and taking care of them. And my niece and nephew did a lot to help take care of them as well. And so there were a lot of, one of the things that I really loved about that time, I really treasure that time that I spent with them, because I got to talk to them on a level that I had never really talked to them before. And we had some really good conversations, and they told me all sorts of really wonderful stories about their childhood. And I kept thinking, I gotta do something. I gotta write this down. I don't want to lose it. And so uh, I this is sort of brings to the heart of what we are trying to do, is that I have lost a lot of those stories. I didn't get them written down. I didn't record them fast enough. I've got some of them, And that's why when my mom had passed away and my Aunt Lily had passed away, and then I had my Aunt Kay. She was at this time in a senior's home. She was 101 years old.
Wow.
And, so I decided, okay, I'm going to, when I spend time with her, I'm going to get her to tell me more stories, and I'm going to record them so that I have
Lucky.
them. She passed away at 103 years of age.
That's
I have
incredible.
I have these wonderful stories that she told me over the couple of years that she was in this home, and I would go and visit her, and so I'm very honored to be able to have that. And it was lovely because a lot of the stories she told about my Aunt Lily
Mm.
and my aunt and my mother and my grandparents, and so it gave me an insight into a lot of what was going on, and it tied into a lot of the stories that my mom told me as well.
Yes. That's wonderful. It's priceless. It's just priceless to have that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, which brings us to the memoir movement, and the mission is one of the missions that I have. Apart from helping, everyone write their life stories, I want, to encourage teenagers to write their stories. I do encourage children. I've actually worked in schools to help children write their life stories before, and then and adults, anybody, any age, please start writing. Is one of the things too is the memoir movement, relating back to Aunt Kay, as you say as well, is um, is that every senior in this on the planet, the dream is that every senior on the planet is partnered off with someone who will help them write their life story. It could be a caregiver, a family member, a student, anybody. And through of course, an easy tool like the Biography Timeliner. And this memoir movement is really starting to gain some traction, and I really believe that it will take off very, very soon. Um, well, first of all, as it goes, a year ago, I was in the finals in Ontario for the budget to fund a program like the memoir movement. Well, to fund Donna and my program to actually get it going. It didn't make it. There were a lot of other programs but we were in the finals. We were out of 9 in this entire province, which is a huge, huge province. So that was wonderful. It also helped us connect with various people all over the world, including the Minister of Loneliness. There is a Minister of Loneliness in the UK, the Honourable Tracy Crouch. She's what they call the British Minister of Loneliness. She got back to me. She's trying to solve the problem of loneliness in our seniors. Well, why don't we listen to our seniors? There's so much we could do for them, but we're not listening. And that's what the Biography Timeliner can do, is if you know of any senior that needs to tell their story as well. So this was a very this is the time for it. This time in history is the time to start documenting our own life stories, getting down our parents' life stories, and making our stand in the world before we're all just gone and forgotten.
So how did you feel about today's video? We'd love to hear from you. Comment below or send us an email. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We would really appreciate it if you did. Be a part of the memoir movement. And remember that your life is a story. Let us help you tell it. Check out the Biography Timeliner at biographytimeliner.com and start your free trial today.
Life stories are the invisible strands that hold our DNA together. Without our stories, we drift. With them, we remain anchored together forever.